So, I originally wasn't going to make a video on these guys at all, but to be honest, every time I stream, I get asked these same questions over and over and over again, because obviously my audience hasn't seen an actual video from me, so they keep asking questions every time they enter my stream, and I keep having to answer the same exact question over and over again. So I decided, even though originally I was going to do videos on this, I thought, you know what, fuck it, right, let me make a video. There will be 3 characters I will be talking about in this video. 1, Tribbie. Probably the most asked question I get every single stream: is Tribbie worth it? Is Tribbie at E0 garbage? Is Tribbie at E1 worth it? Blah 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 blah, right? And then after this, Casterus and Anaxa. Alright, so first, let's start off with Tribbie, since she is on the current banner, and this is more important to a lot of people, right? How strong is E0 Tribbie versus E0 Robin? Now, in my opinion, E0 Tribbie does have more value than an E0 Robin. Robin, without her light cone, usually does have ult uptime issues, and to be honest, her only worth is when she's actually in her ult, while Tribbie very easily can have 100% ult uptime and always have that res pen up without much issue. So that is an advantage Tribbie has over Robin, and yes, Robin has action advance, however DDD goes pretty crazy with an E0 Tribbie, if I'm being quite honest, right? So if we're talking about no light cone performance, Tribbie in my opinion is more worth it, not to mention that her buffs are universal for all types of damage in this game, while Robin, as we are seeing now, her attack buffs are basically useless for HP scalers, so you just don't really use her with the HP scalers basically at all, right? So keep that in mind. Tribbie is more universal, performs similarly, does more damage. I would 100% say E0 Tribbie is very good value currently, and better than an E0 Robin. And then the second we go into E1s, it just, you know, E1 Tribbie is just the best in the game, okay? There isn't a single better value unit than E1 Tribbie. I am quite sick of people who just hate on this character because they're a child. It's fucking getting on my nerves at this point, but please don't listen to these biased people who are obviously skipping her. E1 Tribbie and E0 Tribbie are some of the highest value you can get for your Jades in the entirety of the game, and E1 Tribbie straight up is the highest value you can get for your Jades in this game. E1 Tribbie, there just really isn't anything like it in the game currently, and as far as we're aware, nothing like it in the future, until maybe Saridra, who's rumored the next Remembrance support in around 3.5, right? Next, after Tribbie, we have Castorice and Anaxa. Now, ironically, Castorice was the one being doom posted when we got kit leaks, and Anaxa was the one being called the most broken sub DPS in the game. Yet, of course, given time, and when you're actually able to see gameplay instead of just blank numbers, multipliers, and whatever's in their kit, right? It's actually the opposite now. Castorice is now the one where people are like, oh shit, this is crazy broken and OP, and Anaxa is the one that people are calling pretty much mid, and to be honest, they aren't wrong. Now, for anyone who's actually been able to keep up with the V1 Anaxa leaks, the reason why Anaxa is so underwhelming currently is that stack generation really isn't all that much of an issue for Herda anymore. If you're able to run a Serval on Eagle set with half decent speed stats, then that's usually enough to get max stacks on enemies before your Herda uses her next enhanced skill, meaning stack generation just isn't an issue anymore, right? And not to mention, because Serval ults a lot more often than Anaxa, this also allows Tribbie to do more follow-up attacks as well, right? So in reality, Serval, because of her being able to get the ult so easily, does very similar amount of turns to Anaxa. And then the other problem with Anaxa is his sub DPS performance in terms of just overall damage is worse than Jade. The only time he does more damage than Jade is usually in single target, since he is bounce, right? He is an AoE, he is bounce, right? So if there's one mob on field, his attack will bounce multiple times on that one mob, so overall he usually does the same damage no matter how many enemies are on field. So He has worse damage than Jade, not better stack generation than Serval, and he's skill point hungry. This is something a lot of people don't consider, is that you want to use his skill every single turn. And the reason this can be a little bit annoying is because Herta, without the Lycone especially, does have skill point issues on her team. So Anaxa is skill point negative, unlike Jade. He doesn't give a speed buff like Jade does, which can allow your Herta to use attack boots, which makes a pretty decent difference in your damage, right? And Jade does more overall damage. Not to mention, you can also put Deck Collector on Link Shaw and get even more follow-ups from Jade and damage that way as well. So currently, Anaxa is just, in my opinion, worse than Jade for Herta currently. He just isn't all that good. I've already seen videos on it in E6 Serval and in Anaxa at E00. They genuinely perform very, very close in terms of cycle clears. Anaxa cleared at the very end of 2 cycles, and then Serval cleared at the very beginning of 3 cycles with a Herta. And that type of performance difference just isn't worth it. Now, I've seen a lot of people coping. Oh, Zhao Q situation all over again. This is a Zhao... No, it's not, guys. The Zhao Q situation was people complaining about him not being a general buffer, right? This was mostly what was going on back then. People wanted him to be a general buffer or a dot character, right? Or a healer for Acheron, but when they saw that he was getting a lot of nerfs version after version, people wanted to pull for him less and less and less. However, Zhao Q has always been Acheron's #1 ult stack generator, right? There just isn't anyone that even comes close to him, and people have been aware of that. It's just that back then the MOC HP inflation was a lot slower, and people didn't think that they'd have to actually pull for Zhao Q to clear endgame in the slightest. So they skipped him, then MOC inflation hit like crazy, and now it feels like shit using an Acheron without a Zhao Q. This is not the same situation, because Serval, as I've mentioned before, can do stack generation on the level of Anaxa, and so can Jade. And Jade can do it while being skill point friendly, giving a speed buff, and doing more damage all at the exact same time. This is just the problem with Anaxa currently. I think his Lycone should also get a buff, as it's like incredibly general for some reason. It should become a little more niche, and in turn making it stronger for him, since he's already getting a free-to-play Lycone option anyway, unlike Casterus. So if you can't pull the signature, you can at least use that free-to-play Lycone, right? And his E1 isn't even anything that crazy either. I'm pretty sure it's also just like defense reduction or whatever. Basically, the man is very weird. And another thing about Anaxa is his 140% crit damage increase trace does not activate unless he's the only erudition on the team, which is fucking retarded, right? So whenever he's a sub DPS with the Herta or someone else, he is not getting that 140% crit damage buff inside his kit, once again leading to significantly less damage as a sub DPS. His kit, it feels like a mix of sub DPS and half hyper carry DPS. It's like Hoyo couldn't decide, so they just mixed the two together to kind of like have a blueprint for V3 when they actually decide what they want to go for. I don't really care which one they go for. I'd honestly prefer hyper carry, because if Anaxa can be ran as hyper carry, I can pull him on Rob and use my E1S1 Robin with him when he has way better damage numbers, because currently he is literally competing for like, or he's competing with like a Jade or Serval in terms of a performance in endgame, right? People are watching 5, 6, 7 cost runs of Anaxa using these very, very premium supports with Eidolons and Lycones and saying, oh my god, a sub DPS clearing in 2 to 3 cycles with this team, absolutely amazing. Serval can do the exact same shit as this limited 5-star sub DPS. Serval, okay? There is literally a 0 cost cycle on the Legion boss with Serval. So Anaxa doing the same thing at significantly higher cost really isn't that impressive, right? So I do think he's gonna get buffed in V3 100%. I have no doubts about this. It's another My Day situation all over again. My Day was pretty ass in his V1 and V2, then got buffed in his V3, then got Eidolon buffs in V4 and V5. Basically how it always goes, right? The weaker character of the patch in kit leaks almost always gets stronger. And once again, this is not a Zhaoq situation, because Anaxa didn't come out broken as shit like Zhaoq did. When Zhaoq came out, he was absolutely broken as shit for Acheron to an absolutely unprecedented level. Anaxa just came out and he just isn't better than much other options, right? He is maybe better slightly in some case scenarios, like for example the Hule boss in APOC coming up at 3.2 who duels you. The reason this is nice for Anaxa is because he can very quickly get a break off on Hule, because his enhanced skill, whenever he has like I think 5 or 7 weaknesses on an enemy, allows him to do an extra turn, which means an extra attack, right? So in single target with bounce, this is like his best possible case scenario. So he is better than other, you know, Jade and Serval in that situation. However, he just isn't enough of an upgrade right now to justify at all. Next we go into Casterus, right? Casterus, I had an idiot in my community post telling me that My Day would be best in slot for Casterus. Guess what? That isn't the fucking case, okay? Hypercarry Casterus is her strongest team. Hypercarry My Day is his strongest team. Now, I will say My Day and Casterus is 100% viable. You'd usually want a little more, you know, investment. By that I mean maybe Lycones on everyone and possibly even some Eidolons to really make it work, right? And if you're not pulling Tribbie, I'm just gonna say it, you might as well forget about this shit, alright? Maybe unless you have a Ruan Mei, but the Ruan Mei is going to perform significantly worse in a duo DPS team with Casterus and My Day. So if that was your goal, if you want to play Casterus and My Day together, you can, but I highly, highly recommend getting Tribbie. If not, your performance is for sure going to start falling off, right? Next, we have Casterus, her potential ceiling, right? It is incredibly high. It's the highest in the entirety of the game. The main problem with Casterus currently, giving her too much action advance drains your team's HP too fast, leading to her not doing too much damage and your teammates as well dying, right? Now this should basically be completely fixed with Hyacine in 3.3. This is how Hoyo is: create problem, sell solution. Hyacine will be the strongest healer in 3.3. She's gonna be wanna be ran on 180 speed due to her planar set, which increases memo sprites and the wearer's outgoing healing by 20% when you have a character on 180 speed, right? And her best free-to-play Lycone option will be the new Hard to Shop Lycone, which I believe I actually have on my account currently. It increases your speed by 12%. And after the wearer uses skill, increases the damage dealt by all allies for 3 turns by 16%. That will likely be her free-to-play Lycone option. I don't think this was meant for RMC. I do think it was meant for Hyacine for now. So if you want to put that on your Hyacine, that will be probably her best free-to-play option, since you really want to hit that 180 speed threshold for the better healing for these HP scalers, as keep in mind Casterus 100% benefits from overheal. So that is something that will be probably quite prevalent when Hyacine actually releases, right? And Casterus's current best teams seem to be Triby plus RMC and Sunday plus RMC. Honestly, it's very close. The fact that Sunday is actually this close, even though he isn't being taken full advantage of due to his action advance kind of slowing Casterus's damage down, is pretty impressive, right? People were saying, oh, his 20% energy doesn't work, so that means he's so fucking shit. My Day bested slot, Tribbie bested. No, it doesn't work like that. Just because one minor part of his kit doesn't work with a character and everything else doesn't mean that he's completely useless for them. And if anything, once again, he is 100% going to be a best in slot for Casterus. The second Hyacine releases and we get a sustain who is actually able to sustain the entire team while giving Casterus action advance, yeah, Sunday goes up on the ladder for sure when it comes to being best in slot with Casterus. Even more so if you were to get his E1, which by the way increases the Memo Sprite's damage, or sorry, it gives the Memo Sprite 40% defense shred, which is an overall 34% damage increase. So keep that in mind. Sunday was 100% pretty much built for both Aglaia and Casterus. However, his summon damage boost buffs and his Eidolon's targeting summon damage is 100% more targeted towards Casterus than it is Aglaia, because Aglaia's Memo Sprite doesn't take anywhere near the same amount of turns, right? So that's all I want to say for this video. My thoughts on Anaxa, my thoughts on Tribbie, my thoughts on Casterus. Hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good night. Peace.